When discussing the topic of self-identity, there are already several questions and factors in determining the nature of one's true self. A large chunk of human life is based upon answering the question, who am I and why am I here? If we're spending a lifetime trying to answer these questions, what happens when we incorporate the possibility of cloning a human life? With technology advancing at an accelerated rate, we may soon have the capability to clone human beings. René Descartes recognizes personal identity by being able to consciously understand that one exists. If one knows they exist, they are self-identifiable. Even if nothing else were true, this much is certain, that he exists because he is thinking. Therefore, according to Descartes, we could not argue that if a clone were created of a person, the clone would have a personal identity, if it is able to recognize its existence. Descartes does struggle with certain cases of self-identity. One, for example, involves multiple personality disorder. This component puts a few holes into Descartes' theory of being able to self-identify, as the sole person is incapable of identifying with one specific being. The same could be said in the event a clone is made. If the human clone is successful, it should be able to distinguish itself as its own individual person. However, the issue then becomes a struggle for the clone to follow its human nature of finding itself. Therefore, it is no longer who it originally identified as. Instead, would attempt to create its own version of itself to disassociate from human number one, thus creating multiple personalities by being 100% of who they were cloned of and a portion of who they truly want to be moving forward. On the other hand, Derek Parfit perceives the bane of existence to be less about self-identification and more so on one's individual ability to survive. In order to determine whether or not I survive or am responsible for some future action, I must be able to answer the question, am I the same person? When one is cloned, it is only the genealogical structure that is copied, not the memories or the thought patterns of human one. They must trust in what they are taught after they are given life, or distrust in it and try to survive by creating their own memories and indulging within their own learnings of life. Parfit's notion of cue memories does not carry with it the assumption that I, the person remembering, am the very same person who had the experience remembered. Lavanya Ratnam explores self-identification of robots by administering two tests, the mirror test and the wise man test. The mirror test is put into place to see if one can identify themselves by looking at a reflection. One flaw in this, however, is that the average human is unable to identify themselves until they are 18 months to 2 years in age. So what's going on during that time period? According to Joshua Krish, there are 5 stages of self-identification through reflection. That's a mirror, level 1. There's a person in it, level 2. That person is me, level 3. That person is going to be me forever, level 4. And everyone else can see it, level 5. Thus, even in the case of a clone, the clone must experience these stages in order to be considered self-aware. The Wise Man test was administered to 3 robots that were programmed to understand that 2 were considered mute. The researcher asked which robot hadn't received the dumbing pill. One of the bots got up and said, "I don't know." But hearing its own voice, it was able to immediately say politely, "Sorry, I know, I was not given the dumbing pill." While this is a great feat in the eyes of self-identification with artificial intelligence, it does not prove that they have the same level of consciousness that humans do. Ratnam states 3 aspects that separate humans from robots, and those are self-awareness, emotions, and motivation. It seems to me that the ability of a clone to self-identify is unable to be argued. Based upon the thoughts expressed by Descartes, Parfit, and Ratnam, evidence would lead to the agreement that even if one is cloned and no longer who they were cloned of, they are still able to recognize they are alive, able to create and reflect on memories, and, after a period of time, will be able to pass the mirror and the wise man test. Furthermore, the cloned subject would be able to be self-aware, have emotions, and motivation. While the clone's genetics are identical to human number 1, they would still be their own person. Therefore, I conclude that the cloning of a human life does not create a lack of identity within the cloned specimen. In fact, it has the potential to create an identity of its own.